Hello and welcome to Media 7. In this week's program we'll look into the financial future of TVNZ and the country's other free-to-air broadcasters and hear out a debate on whether we should listen to the leader of Libya. But first there's this. Children and medicine make a compelling combination in news and current affairs. Done right, it can have a news value that goes beyond mere human interest. But it's not always done right. This TV3 60 Minutes report in February offered a compelling story.
Imagine giving birth to a perfect-looking little boy, only to discover he's seriously impaired. Wouldn't you go to the ends of the earth to try and make him better? And these days, it's not just a pipe dream. Seriously brain-damaged children are having their lives transformed by revolutionary new treatment.
Indeed, it was such a good story that TV1's Close-Up had already claimed it, bragging that the Turner family had been moved to pursue stem cell treatment for son Caleb, stricken with cerebral palsy, by one of its own stories on cord blood banking in March 2008.
Shirley Turner has allowed herself to dream of a better life for her 2-year-old who isn't toddling. She's taking him to Tijuana in Mexico. In a procedure that lasts just 20 minutes, he'll receive stem cells from umbilical cord blood. 2 vials, $5,000 US each, containing millions of cells which once nourished a new life. The hope is they'll repair damaged brain tissue, make Caleb's life a better one.
As far as I'm concerned, this is the Holy Grail.
But what neither Current Affairs show knew, or cared to tell you, was that the miracle stem cell doctor, American David Steenblock, had recently been charged with gross negligence by his own governing body, among other things.
Gross and repeated negligence, failure to keep records, excessive treatment, misrepresented credentials.
Steenblock was subsequently fined, ordered to take courses in medical ethics and record keeping, and placed on probation for 5 years.
As I've become a professional physician and whatnot, I've just kind of reverted back to my farmhood days and gone back to farming, but now I'm growing stem cells in people's bodies instead of corn in the fields of Iowa.
Steenblock had previously been found guilty of negligence and incompetence in 1991 after a patient died, and of violating his probation and employing unlicensed therapists in 1997. In those cases, Steenblock was using hyperbaric oxygen treatment, which he also claims cures autism. The stem cell treatment received by Caleb isn't approved in the US and is carried out by Steenblock's partner, Fernando Ramirez del Rio, in Tijuana. In 2005, Ramirez told an American newspaper, the Palm Beach Post, he couldn't remember the name of the company that sold him his stem cells. A senior paediatrician told the paper Ramirez's treatment was a total sham and expressed doubt that his injections, at $6,000 a shot, even contained stem cells. So you'd think there might have been some scepticism in reports about the miracle cure, but there wasn't.
They were charged around $20,000 for the stem cells alone. Add on an extra $10,000 they were asked to pay over there if they wanted the stem cells to be injected into his main artery instead of his tummy.
Even the umbilical cord blood banking service, sold to parents for thousands of dollars by Auckland company Cord Bank and heavily promoted in the original Close-Up program, is regarded as unnecessary and even exploitative by most doctors in the field. And still, the miracle cure stories come. Last month, the press in Christchurch ran a story on a family trying to raise $80,000 for stem cell treatment in Mexico. The next day, the paper did report the president of the Paediatric Society's description of the therapy as unproven and potentially dangerous. The Dominion Post ran a story reporting, quote, incredible improvements in another young cerebral palsy sufferer whose parents had paid Ramirez $30,000. For all the flim-flam, it's possible that parents are seeing genuine improvements. But so did New Zealand woman Willie Terpstra after she received stem cell injections for a degenerative condition in China in 2005. She died the following year. And in February, researchers found that a 13-year-old boy had developed brain and spinal tumours as a result of the same stem cell therapy. But 60 Minutes didn't bother to follow that up. Indeed, the only follow-up has been spam advertising for Steenblock's products on the 60 Minutes website. So when parents are moved to spend tens of thousands of dollars because of what they've seen and heard in the media, and the media brag about it, isn't it time to let a few facts get in the way of the miracle cure stories? With me now are Communications Manager for the Neurological Foundation of New Zealand and former journalist Adrienne Kohler.
Hello.
And Head of the Neural Repair and Neurogenesis Lab at the University of Auckland, Dr. Bronwyn Connor, whose work is in researching and developing novel stem cell treatments. Not with me now any of the editors, producers and journalists involved in the stories we've showed. We have been unusually open about the questions we wanted to ask. We published them on the internet. But we can't get these people to defend their stories. TV3 told us that the presence of our two expert panellists represented an imbalance on the panel. We're sorry we couldn't scare up any faith healers at short notice. So, ladies, you'll have to do.
Thank you.
Adrienne, what does the Neurological Foundation do? Who do you represent?
Well, essentially we're a charity that solely raises money for neurological research. We're New Zealand's only major non-governmental fundraiser for that. So our focus is simply on raising money for neurological research for New Zealand and also public education about brain health and brain research.
And it represents both parents and professionals?
It represents everybody. We raise across the board. There's something like 1,000 known neurological disorders, and we will give money to any neurological research subject that faces peer review that gets through our grant system. So we just run on a very strict peer reviewed grant system. Any grant that goes through has had 6 peer reviews, and then it goes through another committee process before it even starts or gets off the ground.
And
so it's very stringent.
The peer review thing is very important, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very strongly scientific-based, evidence-based research studies, and across all universities in New Zealand.
So what does your communications job involve? You talk to journalists, I presume?
Yeah, it's quite varying. It's educating both the public, having information. We have a very information-heavy website, talking to journalists, trying to promote research that we have funded or that's going on in New Zealand to journalists, and taking inquiries. And I also get a lot of inquiries, particularly after a piece like this has run, from journalists trying to follow up, and from support groups, and also from the general public trying to find out more. So I tend to go and try and find the source. So this is how this started, because some of the support groups were worried about, because this was happening, and contacted me and said, do you know about this, what's going on? Because the neurological research and support groups are very savvy. We know what's going on to a certain level. We know what research is current and what is reasonable. And support groups get these questions from their patients all the time, so they naturally also try and stay on top of it.
So have you gone to any of the journalists who made the stories that we've just showed?
I rang them all after I saw the piece in the
What was your reception?
Mainly like, oh yeah, we might run something tomorrow about it, you know, to give some balance. I sent them all the guidelines from the International Society for Stem Cell Research, and I also sent them a study that was done of the 19 clinics on the website about this direct-to-consumer stem cell, which showed that most of them overpromised and had no factual basis or evidence-based. I've never had a single phone call from any media agency to follow up and say, hey, I've seen this, you know, what is the balance side of it? And that's why I started getting really concerned, because I saw there's just no balance in these stories whatsoever.
Yeah, the thing that struck me was, and I presume you as well, particularly with the 60 Minutes story, they took the trouble to go to the US and Mexico. They don't seem to have Googled David Steenblock's name.
No, and in fact, the website, the Mexican website, now has a 60 Minutes piece on it to promote their work. So it's virtually an infomercial for a Mexican stem cell clinic. And they don't mention, like, Farrah Fawcett went to a stem cell clinic. She's died within the normal time. It did nothing to arrest her disease whatsoever. So they downplay the people who have died and upplay the fact that there are some results with this.
Bronwyn Connor, is there a degree of excitement due about the potential of stem cell therapy?
Yes, definitely. Stem cell therapy holds huge potential for repairing a wide range of both neurological diseases and brain injuries, but also through to skin replacement for burns victims, generating new cardiac tissue, pancreatic cells for diabetic patients. It's got huge potential. So these cells are really exciting in terms of what we call regenerative medicine. And the excitement, though, that they hold is also part of the issue why we still need to continue to do more research into understanding how these cells work.
What about this cord blood banking thing? Because I've seen some quite disapproving commentary on it by doctors. Does it matter that it's your child's stem cells that you're saving?
The idea is that you're saving stem cells from your child so they can be put back into your child if the need arose. And traditionally they are used in cases where you have very acute leukemias. So cord blood stem cells are ideal for replacing immune system blood cells, ideally. There's very little evidence to suggest that they can generate any other type of tissue in the body, such as brain cells.
So that's a very limited application, isn't it? And this issue of saving your child's own cells, is that necessary, or are there public stores of?
The beauty behind saving your child's own stem cells and potentially your own stem cells is that you can put them back into yourself. So when we're talking about donating stem cells, the stem cell, of course, is a foreign cell to the body of the recipient. And so like any other transplant, if you're talking about a heart transplant or a liver transplant, the patient that goes into, the patient's body will detect that it's not tissue from their own body and they'll try to destroy it. Stem cells are a little, because they're so immature, they're not so readily detected by the body, so it's not such a big issue. But there is the issue still that they can be detected by the patient's body and destroyed, and you can get an immune response to that. So the idea is that ideally you would have your own stem cells to put back in because they are your own.
Not necessarily umbilical blood stem cells.
No, it's just that's a very easy source of stem cells to harvest. You know, you have the cord blood there, you can just bank it. And as I said, at the moment though, its therapeutic use is fairly limited.
Which brings us to cerebral palsy, which has been at the centre of all these stories. What really can we say about the efficacy of stem cell treatment for cerebral palsy now?
At the moment, the use of stem cell therapy for cerebral palsy is still at the experimental stage. So what we as researchers are trying to do is understand how stem cells work. As I said, the real excitement about stem cells is they have the potential to turn into, if we're talking about embryonic stem cells, which are obtained from a fertilised egg, these stem cells have the ability to turn into any type of cell in the body, which has got huge potential for regenerative therapy. So what we're trying to understand as researchers is if we take these stem cells, how do we tell them to turn into a brain cell to treat cerebral palsy? And this is what we need to do. We don't want to just put the stem cell in, we want to actually put in an immature new brain cell.
What's being done in Mexico by these doctors, does that have any validity at all in your view?
No, not in my view. So they're using cord blood stem cells. As I said, the only generation of cells that are obtained really from stem cells from the cord blood are blood cells and immune cells. There is pretty much no scientific evidence to demonstrate that cord blood stem cells can go on and generate a new brain cell that would be required for the treatment of cerebral palsy.
And are there risks to the treatment?
There are risks to the treatment as there is for any surgery and for any transplant surgery. So you need to remember this is a transplant that these patients are obtaining. There is also potential risk if you take a stem cell. The beauty of the stem cell is that it has the ability to renew itself. It goes on and it divides over and over again and makes multiple copies of itself. The huge risk this faces is that they can actually generate tumours. So this is one of the big issues with stem cell research that we're trying to face. As I said, we don't just put stem cells in, we actually take them down the line to become the type of cell or tissue we want to replace, stop them from dividing over and over again so that they won't form a tumour. If we just put a stem cell in, then there's a huge risk that it will just form a tumour because it hasn't been told what it wants to become or what it needs to become, and all it knows how to do is to divide over and over again.
Adrian, are you seeing this kind of direct-to-consumer offer of stem cell therapy being pitched in the case of other conditions?
Yeah, it is. It's been pitched quite aggressively, actually, and we're finding it across. They promise the world to every single condition that affects the brain, and there's that same issue of downplaying the risks, and And once I started looking into it, there was like an open letter. The spinal cord injuries in particular is one that's being targeted, and so much so that a huge group wrote to Spinal Cord Journal and said an open letter saying, and I agree with them, that it's morally unacceptable to prey and profit from hope for a cure, and that it's unethical to conduct unsupervised experiments on people with spinal cord injuries. And that's essentially what's happening, and what we're trying to say to people. You're going across to somewhere and they're essentially using you as human guinea pigs because you're outside of the whole research clinical trial system. There's no follow-up, there's no baselines, there's no post-operative. They did a study on the 7 patients who went to China for a spinal cord injury. 5 of them developed meningitis after post-operative. None of them showed any improvements.
So what would you like to see the local media do when they get these stories?
Well, for a start, just pick up the phone call and ring us. You know, we have the resources to point them to researchers in New Zealand, especially like Bronwyn, who are actually doing valid research in this area, and so they can get the scientific basis for it, and to bring some balance to it, and talk to neurologists and paediatricians, all of which we can guide them to, and say, this is our point of view about these therapies. This is what we see as the issues. This is really where the science is at the moment. If people choose, people have the right to choose treatments. They also should have the right to be informed. And I really think journalists need to step back and say, is this being run as to international standards, and look at the trials and the techniques, and this is what the overseas research is saying as well. The media are actually feeding these clinics. It is the media stories that are sending the people to these clinics more than any other avenue.
Right. I think we'll finish on that. Adrian and Bronwyn, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
After the break, the financial future at TVNZ.